same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're all following the same thing, but you've got different stories about it and different ways of explaining it and some little different rules. But again, that's the political thing, right? When people have these different interpretations, that's based on that area and how they want to govern that area, right? And what their beliefs are in that sense. So
you believe Christians and Muslims believe in a different depiction of God, because Christians believe a man was God, right? And we don't believe God was a man.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
It's a big difference, right?
I don't know if Christians.
They say Jesus is God, right?
Yeah, that part is totally different, right?
Yeah.
For you, Jesus is merely a prophet.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it believable for me, the Islamic version,
Yeah.
that Jesus and whoever else, Muhammad, peace be upon him for your sake, and what's his, Abraham, David, I don't know. They're all playing the same role in each of your stories, but actually you're acknowledging all of them.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And they're not acknowledging the other ones. And so that makes you more believable for me. And you're the newest one, aren't you? You're the update, you know what I mean? My Jewish mate hates it when I say that. But you are actually, you know, and I've heard guys talk about it here. You are the newest one, so I think, in a sense, it follows logically that you would have improved it, you know what I mean? Largely, they're very similar, you know, because I understand, again, because I lived among Muslim people and spoke to people, and I said to a woman, I can't remember what country she was from, Algeria or something like that, and she wore the, whatever they call it there, you know, a head covering.
Yeah.
She would go out in public with a face veil, with a whole black veil for her modesty. And I would say I don't agree with this type of teaching, you know, this prescription, you know, that women should have to do that. But most Indonesian women don't have to do that, even in a Sharia law area. I've been to Banda Aceh, you know what I mean?
But here's the thing: if a person believes in God, and a person believes that this said book is from God, and they're able to prove and evidence it, then surely the laws, and whether we agree with it, whether we don't, that's secondary, right? Because God said it,
so
and
sorry,
God knows us more.
That
Yeah.
was your original question, and I digressed a lot, didn't I? Yeah. So going back, the thing that people always say here, and I've heard Christians say it, and Jewish say it, and the Muslims say it the most, I think, this is the word of God unchanged from the day it was handed to, you know, and that's impossible to be true, bro. There's no way that hasn't been co-opted, like everything else has been co-opted by the government, the media, the ruling classes. Whoever wanted a bit more control has changed those words. It has not reached the masses without it being corrupted by whoever runs the show. And they don't care about faith in the way that real people do.
If you would have said that about 50 odd years ago, what you would have said probably would have held a lot of weight. However, now, especially in the last, I would say, couple of decades, the oldest manuscript of the Quran was discovered. Yeah, it's currently housed in the University of Birmingham.
Where's that? A recent discovery, the oldest manuscript of the Quran.
So it's the oldest manuscript
in Birmingham.
In University of Birmingham.
Where's it discovered?
It was discovered, I don't know exactly where it was discovered, because what they do is, because they're lacking with resources and they don't have enough people sorry, should we just move down there? There's a lot of people. Yeah. So because they need a lot of manpower to go through these manuscripts. So what they do is they'll discover it and they'll just file them away. So one of those kind of folders that had the 4 folios was actually taken out by accident, and it was checked. And when it was checked, people were like, "Yo, this is the oldest manuscript we have of the Quran."
So I'm sorry, I missed the bit. They're not really sure where it comes from because of the filing process and all that.
It's the filing process.
But they're saying this is the oldest
one.
So
they carbon dated it, and it was done. The carbon dating was done by the University of Oxford. So they dated it to the time of the Prophet.
Okay.
And then the second thing that was done was, okay, so we've proven using empirical evidence, science, that it is from that time. But does it, and is it the same as the Quran that we have today? And they said it has 100% word accuracy with the Quran that we have today.
Really?
So whilst the Bible, the Torah, you're 100% right, because they don't have manuscripts to the time of Jesus or Moses. In fact, the Christians don't even believe the Bible was written at the time of Jesus. They don't believe the Torah was written at the time. Actually, they believe that Moses was given it, and the oral Torah was memorized by the rabbis. But again, it was written afterwards, and the manuscripts that they have are not from Moses. But we do. We've got manuscripts from either the time of the Prophet or at least the first century of the Prophet.
Yeah.
And it measures precisely with what we have today. And secondly, the language by which we read the Quran is exactly the same language that was spoken by the Prophet. So Arabic is a live language. When the language of Jesus is Aramaic, it's not spoken today. Hebrew is only spoken in Palestine, Israel, whatever you want to call it. So even the languages are dead. And the Torah, i.e. the Old and New Testament, wasn't memorized. But the Quran has been memorized for generations such that even if it's burnt, you can reproduce that word for word. Do you see? That's why. That's why. But you can question me on that. But that's why we say that the criteria of the Quran's validity in terms of preservation is different to that of the other books.
Fair enough. You know, I mean, I don't have a. How can I say I don't have any desire to argue against that? But my main point being that, you know, and again, you've asked me why I wouldn't follow Islam if I have some, you know, positivity towards it, because I don't need any form of prescriptive dogma in my life, really. I just have my own sense of, you know.
Where's that dogma coming from that you
But,
have?
you know, I respect any people that take it seriously, right? I do. And again, that's another reason why I've got a lot of positivity towards Islam, because people are more devout, you know, and it's like, well, if you're going to believe in it, do it properly.
So,
you know what I mean?
So here's the question. How do you believe the universe came to be?
I can't really offer any reasonable suggestion for that, you know. It's impossible to answer, isn't it? And anyone that claims that they can answer it with definity, then you have to view this with suspicion, I think.
No, I think depending on any evidence that's given, I don't think things should be viewed from suspicion just because they've been posited. I would say view things with suspicion based upon the strength of the evidence presented. So over here, when we're talking about how the universe came to be, we venture into logic, reasoning, philosophy, metaphysics, right?
Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of, you know, Islamic scholars who believe in science and all that, you know, and it's like this process of Big Bang or whatever and everything that follows that. I believe that there's many Muslims that can agree with that story, right, that explanation, but obviously with the caveat that God did it, right? Is that fair to say?
So what we say is, even before we jump to God did it, I would say...
Because that's the only part that we can't explain, isn't it? That part at the beginning. If we believe the Big Bang and everything, and I don't see... It's a good theory, it's only a theory, and people need to remember that that even is not definitive. You know,
there's a lot of evidence.
Just because it's commonly accepted does not make it the ultimate truth, right? And there's no possible way you can and probably never will know the ultimate truth, right? But we'll take the scientific explanation. I'll take it. It's pretty good. You know, with a lot of things align logically and whatever. Yeah, it's a good interpretation. But then at the beginning, did God make it happen? Yeah, how could anyone possibly answer that? But yeah, if God has spoken to people and told them this, then it's just a question of faith, isn't it? If you believe those people or not.
Yeah.
So there's no way to say yes or no on either side, I think. But what evidence are we looking at to say?
Deductive reasoning. So I'll give you an example of a reasoning syllogism, they call it,
Yeah.
Anything that begins has a cause. Do you accept that reasoning?
Sorry?
Anything that begins
has
a cause. So anything with a beginning means that there's a cause. It had a cause to begin.
I suppose.
The universe began to exist.
Yeah.
Therefore, the universe had a cause.
Yeah. All right. So, just in what space did God, Allah, exist before that happened? I mean, is this a linear process that we can interpret? Can we explain it by time? Do we accept the definition of time or whatever?
Let's see.
And so there was a time from the moment of the creation until now, and we can call that time, and we can say, yeah, we accept something about that happened, right? It happened, it occurred. And well, before that, was there such a thing as that time, and was there space and dimensions within which Allah existed? I mean, I understand that's not a man, and so that answers the question as no, doesn't it? It's not. I mean, what's your?
It's a good question.
For me,
that it's probably secondary to where we're actually trying to go, because if we accept that the universe had a cause, regardless of time or space, we would have to ask ourselves that time and space came from the Big Bang, as we understand it in this world. Therefore, did that have a cause? Then the question would be, there's two options now. Either that had a cause, that had a cause, that had a cause, that had a cause. Either it carries on going on for infinity, which doesn't make sense, or there has to be an end to that cause, which people call the first cause, which makes the most sense.
First cause, yeah. So that's quite a definitive statement, isn't it?
Yes.
To say the first cause, but again,
which makes the most sense? Infinite chain or first cause?
Infinite chain, I think.
But infinite chain is incoherent, doesn't make sense. You can't have an infinite chain of
but
causes.
It doesn't attempt to answer the question by fallacious reasoning, does it? Because that is while I do accept that logic of things have a cause, but to a certain extent, it's a fallacy.
I'll tell you why it's a fallacy.
Only a fallacy because we can't prove it to be true.
No,
so we're assuming it's true, and we're saying it must be true.
It's a fallacy.
I think it was a deductive philological reasoning. I'm sorry, I get confused about which one is which, how it's the exact definition, but we're on the same page generally. But yeah, any assumption that it must be is a fallacy.
Right. So if
with limited evidence.
Yeah, but the issue here is we only accept things that are fallacies as truth or as something that we use for the universe only when it comes to God, because an infinite regress is not used for anything else. In fact, it's rejected when it's posited as a solution to anything else, because when something is fallacious, it means it goes against logic, it goes against everything that we know to be true, to be coherent, and because the body of evidence goes with, we take that which is coherent over the incoherent, because the coherent is where the body of evidence is, and we don't want to put ourselves where there's no evidence or where the logic is faulty.
The nature of fallacy is that it can appear to be logical, isn't it? It follows a logical pathway. That's why you can accept it, but it doesn't make it true.
Fallacy by definition means it's using incoherent logic. It just doesn't work.
Well, it's a definition.
Then what fallacy would you be able to give me an example of in real life?
Like,
of a fallacy that we deem to be acceptable and true?
Well, just, the classic fallacy is A is true, so B must be true, right? I saw A happen once and B followed that. Therefore, every time A happens, B must happen.
Exactly.
That's the classic fallacy, isn't it?
And that's not a fallacy that you accept as your worldview, because you said at the beginning, because what you're referring to is induction, science that you base upon your observations, and you said at the beginning that you don't accept science because of that reason. So you've gone against that.
Oh, I don't know if I did say that.
Yeah, remember at the beginning you said Big Bang is the best evidence we have. Yeah. We've got science.
Big Bang is a good explanation.
Good explanation, but do we have anything that can, give us that best explanation? We don't. Things change, science changes. So for me, I can't.
So what explains was the catalyst, and your answer is the kind of simple one that it's God, right?
So even when you're saying that you don't accept that because you believe it to be fallacious reasoning, then we come back to this point that again there is no evidence that we are accepting something that is fallacious and we're living our life with it coherently.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we've gone far enough with that.
Yeah. So let me just complete the point then. What I'm saying is that logically, rationally, if you're looking at whether it's all these non-Muslim philosophers like Aristotle, Plato, Leibniz, all these guys, whether it's philosophers that have come or theologians that have come from the Muslim world, like Ibn Sina, Ibn al-Haytham, Al-Razi, Al-Ghazali, all these guys, all of them accept theologically, scientifically, metaphysically that you cannot have an infinite regress of causes or dependent things. There has to be an end to that chain, and that end to that chain has to be a singular, has to be independent, pre and post eternal, and nothing like it. And for us as Muslims, because whenever I speak to atheists, they're okay with that definition of a necessary existence. They don't have an issue with that, because for you to claim an infinite regress, it goes against everything we understand.
I don't necessarily claim infinite regress. I'm not sure.
Yeah, of course. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But what I would suggest is that, as far as we understand things, really understand, and we have theories, and everyone's got a different theory, and everyone's got different reasoning. But as far as we understand it, I don't think there is any beginning or end, actually. We can put a beginning and an end on something, and we can try and make it linear, because that helps us to understand it in any way at all. Understand this thing, existence, that we don't understand whatsoever, and we try to understand it and claim that we can understand it, so we give an explanation for it, and that largely comes out linear. That kind of helps us out a little bit to view the existence in that way. But the reality is, it's probably not that way. That's the only way we can look at it. So I don't think there is necessarily a beginning or an end, and it's because again we've only got this limited
circular,
perception of time. Yeah, it's like they say, time is a flat circle, right? And it's like it's happening in some sense simultaneously. There's only one moment. There's one moment constantly, but we're constantly within that one moment, aren't we?
If you were to go back in time, could you kill your grandfather?
We have to say the beginning and the end, because we have no other way to perceive.
Okay, let's try to deal with this in terms of an example.
Yeah.
Could you go back in time and kill your grandfather?
Probably not. It seems unlikely to me. I mean, you can't expect me to answer that question, can you?
No,
What's
because
the point you're making? It's rhetorical, isn't it?
No, it's not, because if you
Could I go back in time and kill my grandfather?
Because if you believe,
I doubt it.
Because if you believe time is circular, then according to your worldview, you should be able to. But if you believe time to be linear, that means you simply can't.
Yeah. So what I would say is that moment back in time. Let's not say that, because that didn't happen. But with my grandfather was born, in a sense, that moment I think is happening now as well, in that moment for him, for the way that he perceives the world. Not my grandfather. My grandparent witnessing the birth of my parent, right? For example, and in that moment for the grandparent, that is now, and in that moment, in this moment now for me, that is now, and so there really, in a way, there is only ever now, and. Yes, we are growing and changing, but we just put a language around it, which is kind of like time and things, to help us understand it and to help us categorize it and to help us organize it. But I don't think even that is necessarily definitive. I'm not saying it's not the best argument, you know what I mean? I'm not here to argue with you that now it's not 5:15 and, I'll get home by 6 o'clock sort of thing, because I do know that's true, But I do think that we're kind of limited in the way that we try to explain existence and what we're experiencing all the time. And I think there's far greater answer to it. And I think the point that we're debating is me saying that you can't possibly claim the definitive answer. In light of that evidence that I present, I know it barely constitutes evidence, but
exactly. That's what I was going to say.
I don't think you can claim the definitive answer. And that would be my only sort of issue with Islamic teaching or behaviour or something like that. That would be my own issue, that you would claim absolutely that you know it to be correct, and how you would get that
Yeah, so-
evidence.
so
you
what
know?
we would
and
say-
I can accept your faith and say maybe you're right. You
No.
know what I mean?
No.
But
What we
I
say-
think there's a flaw in the teaching, the dawah, maybe, for you to make that claim.
Yeah, so what we say is that when we present our body of evidence, we take the inference to the best explanation, which is a compounding of evidences that when you take an inference, you place it on another inference and another inference and another inference
Yeah.
to the best explanation,
Yeah.
then you reach something closest to the truth, something that's the most coherent, something that makes the most sense. Something that makes the most sense. So when we're saying, for example, and we're giving evidences that, look, whatever we believe, whatever we say is coherent,
Yeah.
can be evidenced through empiricism,
Yeah.
can be evidenced through metaphysics, can be evidenced through philosophy, and other people are having to resort to contradictions. They're having to resort to blind faith. Not even because there's a difference between blind faith
Yeah.
and normal
Yeah.
faith, reasoned
I mean,
faith.
do you know, are you aware of this? I would imagine that my mate, you know, God bless him, I love him, unfortunately he's Israeli, you know, and he will tell me almost exactly what you're telling me, exactly the same.
He
And
won't.
I said this to him the other day, that because I have spoken to Muslims in here before, and I say, I would go to Speaker's Corner and the guy would tell me the same thing as you. Do you know what I mean?
I'll
And
tell you-
everybody has
yeah.
this egocentric position that they're trying to push, and it's like, I don't know, you'd be doing better without that element, wouldn't you?
Okay,
You know?
so-
And my mate would do better without that element.
Let me
Do
give you an
realise
example.
that that's affecting you both
Let me-
equally, and you're expressing it almost identically.
Let me give you an example. When I talk about coherent, let me add moral things as well, yeah? Do you think it's ever okay to kill babies?
No, shouldn't be, should it? I would say.
Never okay to kill babies.
I mean, you're gonna. It's very complex, isn't it? But the obvious answer is no.
Obvious answer is no. I agree with you. The
Yeah.
Quran agrees with you. The Hadith agrees with you.
Yeah.
However, when a Jewish individual will come, he will open his book. He'll go to 1 Samuel 15, verse 3.
Right.
They're allowed. Yeah, it says, kill the Amalek, the men, the women, the children, the suckling babies. And then it starts going to ox, donkey, etc. Now, my point here is that if a person is making a case for the validity of a religion, in terms of it being coherent, in terms of it being morally acceptable, my argument would not, on my view, I wouldn't be able to say that Islam and Judaism is the same in this regard. We're completely different.
Yeah.
If we're talking about preservation of scripture and we're saying we have manuscripts that date to the time of the Prophet, we are not the same. If we're saying that when it comes to preservation in terms of oral preservation, in terms of language preservation, I would argue we are not the same as Judaism. When it comes to even other punishments, for example, if you were to rape a child, according to the Torah, you give 50 shekels to the father and you marry the child, and you're not allowed to divorce that child. According to Islam, that's completely
I
unacceptable.
mean, again, you're saying exactly the same thing that he's going to say to me
He can't.
about you guys,
We
right?
don't believe
you
any
know,
of this.
You know that the main criticism that Islam is getting in the world is
Like
that,
what?
they want to take over and they want to kill everyone. Everyone says this thing, the penalty for apostasy is death, right? And this is one of the major. What's your view on that? If you could answer that for me simply.
Yeah, I'll answer very simply. If a person is a Muslim and they leave Islam, they're not just put to death like that.
I'm sorry?
They're not just put to death.
I know they're not. No, of course I know they're
No,
not.
that's the answer.
But, yeah, right.
problem?
So where does this, belief come from? People say, Islam says. Now, I've got my own explanation for it. I'll tell you quickly in case we digress, because I think it's important to say.
No, I'll give the explanation because then it might seem like I'm just taking what you're saying and reflecting it back to you.
All right, if you'd like to
Yeah,
do it
so
that way.
back in the days, there was no distinction between church and state. Yeah, they were all one. So if a person leaves the religion, that in itself is not warranting their death.
Yeah.
However, if now they are, causing corruption in the land, encouraging disbelief amongst people, causing issues, that one of the punishments that can be warranted is killing that person. Yeah. However, if the country has treaties with other countries, then you can excommunicate that person. You can, there's other punishments as well. But a lot of people, what they like to do is they like to harp on that technicality when the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself said that the hudud punishments, that these punishments pertaining death and violence, they are there as a deterrent. They're not there as the default thing. And we also have a court system that the issue goes to court, things get judged, and then that is also something that is also conceivable. But it's not the default as they're trying to make it out to be. And even if you look at the way it's been applied in, for example, the Ottoman Empire, somebody called Vava Nama, and this is documented, left Islam, they were excommunicated. I think the technical term is, I forgot the technical term, when you're kicked out of the country, sent to another country, and that's what happened to them. They weren't put to death. Even at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah.
I believe you, of course. I do.
But here's the thing: when people try to, take a specific thing and they apply it generally, which goes against the principles of fiqh.
So you would have the rhetoric of the likes of Tommy Robinson and his mob and that saying, all Muslims believe non-Muslims should be put to death, wouldn't you? That's the way that they attack you in the press here, right? And you've got a lot of people that believe that that's...
but there's no evidence for that, though.
No, but there's some kind of quote, isn't there, from a Quran or maybe a hadith or something. There will be some kind of quote about putting the unbeliever to death, right?
Yeah.
It'll be written in ancient Arabic, and people would have done it, interpreted it in their own ways, right?
No. What happens there is they refuse to show you the verse before and the verse after. Because if you look at the verse before and the verse after, it tells you it's to do with combatants.
So I just tell you, because again, I think it's important to say, on my perception of a line like that, whatever it is, I can't quote it, would be saying that, believe in God, the higher power, and the goodness that it brings everybody, following that brings positivity to everybody, right? Live this way, and if you choose not to live this way, you deserve to die. Now that isn't saying on a political level if you're Muslim or if you're not Muslim. That's saying if you're a good person or if you're not a good person. So I would give that, and I would say that's a favourable interpretation for followers of your faith, and I would say that that's probably a reasonable interpretation.
Yeah, but
and to politicise it by making it that you're Muslim or you're not Muslim, that's problematic, and that causes division between people. But to say it as in, you're either a believer and a good person, a person who follows, positivity, or you're not a person who does that, you follow negativity and evil, and if you do follow negativity and evil, then yes, you deserve to die. And I think, maybe that's true, right? So I can give it that kind of positive interpretation. That was my personal interpretation of a line like that. But then you will allow the mass media to, lead people to believe that it should be interpreted as Muslims believe non-Muslims die,
no,
right?
But when someone takes,
and I don't think that your interpretation is more for yourselves is more helpful than my interpretation.
No, look, we're not here to make up interpretations, like people do with,
so
the Bible.
You've got a strong prescription and you believe this
absolutely.
thing.
We get
and, there's merit in that. There's merit to choose.
So no one can just
choose
come
the rules and stick to them, right?
Yeah, no one can come and just manipulate it for their own desires. We have a system in place that has been told to us from God. In the Quran it says, if you don't know, ask somebody of knowledge. So we have scholars that interpret, verses, and eventually that chain goes to the companions of the Prophet and to the Prophet. So even our interpretations have a chain of narration. It's not some random guy that comes and says, you know what, because I'm living in this country, I have to give a favorable response. My response to you for that verse was very simple. Let the Quran interpret what that verse says. And you look at the verse before and the verse after. Anyone that is remotely, that's using common sense, that's being intellectually honest, will read something in context. You can't read something out of context and then assume that what you're saying is what they believe in. That's just dishonest, and you know what? It's very uneducated as well, because that verse clearly says that it's to do with combatants. And if those combatants don't fight with you, then don't fight with them. And when you look at actually Islamic history and you see senior figures, for example, one of the most famous Talmuds that are written for the Jews are written by Maimonides. And Maimonides is one of their most senior figures. Maimonides used to live amongst the Muslims in Andalusia, Muslim Spain. Why wasn't he killed? Many Christians that were tutors to the leaders of that time. So applicably, it doesn't make sense. In terms of reading in context, it doesn't make sense. So anyone can do that. I can find a verse in the Bible that Jesus says, anyone who doesn't believe in me, bring them in front of me and kill them in front of me.
Yeah, no, and again, I always tell people that I'm sure you will find the same thing in the Old Testament, something equally brutal or something equally prescriptive. And, and for me, a lot of this kind of brutal and fear-mongering stuff, again, it comes from an urge to control. And the urge to control doesn't come from a higher power, that, it comes from men with political motivations, and they want to control an area.
Absolutely,
and things. So that's why I'm saying over these years, all of these books, and you can tell me the story about the carbon dating of the page and that, and again, it's easy to tell you that.
It's just evidence.
I mean, have you touched it yourself? Have you seen it yourself? So anyway, we don't need to go around in a circle about that.
No, I went to Birmingham. We've seen it.
I'm saying you don't. The very notion.
You can go to Birmingham today.
What they've been telling you for all these years.
You can go to Birmingham. You can go to Birmingham today, and you can see it yourself. You can check the University of Oxford about their data of carbon dating. If you become a skeptic to that level, then nothing that you believe, you can't take anything that you say.
That's right.
So
you're depending on the element of faith, aren't you, to choose a belief and follow it. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that's much easier for people to live life.
Actually, what I've demonstrated is that I can defend my faith using evidence, empirical evidence, logical evidence, philosophical evidence. And which is not something that people of other faiths can necessarily do as effectively.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
For example, Jesus coming. They believe Jesus to be fully God and fully man.
Yeah, right.
Now, fully God and fully man, even for elementary, understanding individual would be able to tell you that's a contradiction. How can you be fully God and fully man? They both contradict each other, because the fully man aspect is limited in knowledge, and the fully God aspect is all knowledgeable. So it's contradictory.
Yeah, indeed it is. You have the angels in the Quran, don't you? And they're coming to Earth and they're interacting with people, with angels,
with prophets. Yeah.
And I don't know what my question is really, but what I'm trying to, because you're talking about this lack of logic with the story of the Trinity, right? To be all three things at the same time, which is, impossible, right? But and I wanted to see what supernatural elements might be. You might comment on the supernatural elements of your own stories. So that would be angels, I suppose, wouldn't it?
Okay. So
is that not illogical? Or?
Right. I've understood your point. So what we're saying is that when you're presenting evidence for God, now God, the concept of God should be coherent, because that evidence is required. Or that step is going to determine you forever being in heaven or hell. So the concept of God has to be coherent. So when it comes to the concept of God, our concept of God is coherent. We believe He is one, independent, pre and post-eternal, and nothing like it. Chapter 112 of the Quran, which I haven't come across an atheist that accepts the three main rules of logic to say that that is incoherent. They may disagree with it based on other kind of argumentation, but it's not going to be based on coherence. However, when you're looking at the concept of God in Christianity, because we have to do a like for like comparison, the concept of God in Christianity is inherently incoherent. So
Yeah.
so like for like comparison. When you're doing angels, it's not like for like because all three, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, accept angels. All of them accept the devil. All of them
Right.
accept God. But
Yeah,
we're talking about the
you know,
concept of God.
I'm not really putting one against the other in terms of those three monotheistic religions, but I'm saying that how can any of you, and again, as I've said to you, probably in my experience, maybe this proselytizing is happening a bit more from Islam, you know, and again, that's not necessarily a bad thing because if you believe in something, go to town, you know what I mean, believe it fully, and you know, yeah, promote that by all means if you believe that. But I would just like you to kind of question yourself as to how true it can be, and you're giving these kind of what I might call a little bit fallacious arguments about the logical coherence, because and you make sense that there's a lack of logical coherence in the Christian story or whatever, but you know, how is there logical coherence in your story? And I like the way you're saying that God is not a man, right? Yeah. And you know, again, if they're saying God's a man, that lacks logical coherence. But you're saying God is not a man, and that's cool. I can agree with that. And as I asked you, in what space does it exist then? You know, and is you're like the way you're telling the story. There's certainly the will of a man, isn't there? There's the conscious. What is it? Intent and action. You're claiming conscious intent and action to make all this happen. You're claiming that. So that in some way, where does the logical coherence to explain that arise
Yeah.
from?
So your first point was the mere fact that I'm talking about logical coherence.
Yeah.
And saying that, you know, Islam is coherent, that in itself is fallacious. That's a contradiction. Because if something is logically coherent, by definition, that means it's not fallacious because it's in line with the rules of logic. And secondly, when
again, this is almost like a fallacious loop.
it's how
Isn't it?
look, I'm failing to understand how you believe me presenting coherent arguments is fallacious.
Well, I just.
How does that
No,
make any
they're
sense?
coherent arguments, but that's the nature of fallacy, that it isn't necessarily
it's not.
accurate, you know?
Okay, so the three rules of
sounds
logic.
right, because A follows A, B, C, D, but maybe it wasn't like that, you know?
No, because I think you're confusing something between true and sound. My arguments are both
Yeah.
true and sound. Yeah, let me give you an example. So when I'm talking about
They're
logically,
sounds, but are they true? And I don't expect you to be able to justify it.
If something
you know?
is sound,
I don't
it has
demand
to
that
be true.
from you.
Yeah. But if something is sound,
You claim it.
if something is sound, it has to be true. You can't have something sound if it's not true.
Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
And when you're talking about coherence, for something to be coherent, it can't be contradictory. And them claiming that there is such thing as a man God is a
Yeah.
clear, blazing contradictory. And you can't just say,
Yeah.
oh, you believe in angels, that's incoherent as well. But the mere fact that you're presenting something as
I mean,
coherent,
the angel
doesn't make sense.
appears as a man on earth.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, appears. It doesn't mean it becomes a man. That it is a
And
man.
they have mass and interact with the world in the way that a man does.
Interacts with the prophet. Yes.
And where did they come from? Like, there's no physical space. What's your position on a physical space that would be known as heaven?
Yeah,
hell,
it's
or an
beyond
afterlife.
where we can reach.
I mean, are they physical spaces
Yes, it's a physical space.
outside this?
Yes, outside. Yeah.
Outside the globe's floating?
Absolutely.
According to science?
Absolutely.
the
According
globe
to science,
is
according to everybody,
floating.
we don't know what's out there.
Beyond that,
We don't
know.
Yeah.
We
So
don't
it's
know.
conceivable within this framework that it does exist.
Yeah, I mean, anything's conceivable and anything's possible.
No,
but
there's a difference
the
between
claim
something
that
being
you would know for sure,
No.
I think is, the
Oh,
main
right.
problem here.
So here's where my argument is that if we prove that there is a God, we prove that there is a revelation that came from him, that is indeed from him, that there was a prophet and the prophet spoke the truth. Then by extension, whatever has been said by the prophet that's come from the scriptures, therefore is true. Are you going to tell me that's incoherent or
No, again, I'm not really saying it's incoherent.
that's a
but-
coherent argument? If there is a God, we prove it. If there is revelation, the Quran, and we prove it to be true, the Prophet Muhammad came, we prove him to be a true prophet. Therefore, angels, heaven, hell are all a consequence of their teachings. Therefore, all of that should, by extension, be true as well. Agree or disagree?
I mean, an extension again is a pathway to fallacy, isn't it? By
No, it's a
extension.
deductive reasoning.
But I'm not
If the
saying it's
premises
not
are-
true.
if
Do
the
you know what I mean?
premises-
I
yes.
think you understand that.
If,
but
yeah, of course, if in deductive reasoning the premises are true, the claims are true, therefore it follows that the conclusion is also true.
yeah, it follows.
Otherwise a person has to tell me which premise is not true for the conclusion not to follow.
Yeah, perhaps. All right.
Do you see?
We've run this course, I think, for today. It was a good one.
No.
I will
The
look
pleasure
out
was
for you
mine.
around.
Thank you.
know?
What's your
Thank
name?
you. Dean.
Dean, nice to meet you.
Your name?
Zishan.
Zishan. All right,
Zishan. Take it easy, brother.
You might be a real one.
Thank you. He said you might be a real one, so I'm counting that, alhamdulillah, as a win, alhamdulillah.